Welcome to NuttieBuddie Sports. The San Francisco 49ers versus the Green Bay Packers.
Okay, welcome back to NuttieBuddie Sports, and this is going to be our instant reaction podcast to the games that happen here on Saturday. And it's going to be a little bit of a sour one, I feel like, because I have two Packer fans with me, and that's the first game we're going to talk about. So returning, I have Chris. Chris, how's it going, man?
Couldn't be worse.
Couldn't be worse. That's fair. And for the first time on my podcast, I have DJ. DJ, how's it going?
Doing pretty good.
Doing pretty good. And who do you root for, DJ, just for the listeners that you haven't been on yet? So.
Oh, yeah, I'm a Packers all the way.
Packers all the way. Okay. So what we're going to do is this is going to be just a quick instant reaction to both games. We're going to talk a little bit about them. And then obviously, if you're looking for more in-depth reaction, we'll probably have another podcast later on this week. But to begin, let's talk about the 49ers against the Packers, because that's the first game that, the last game we just watched together. And let me just get your initial thoughts on the game. Maybe we could start with DJ right away. DJ, what were your initial thoughts on the Packers versus the 49ers?
Well, it was basically what everyone was fearing it would be. As far as the Packers struggling on offense, like they always have been recently against the 49ers. Personally, going into the postseason, I felt really confident this year. I mean, last year I still felt and 2 years ago, I knew they didn't have any chance. Them making it to the NFC Championship was unbelievable. I mean, that was like a 12 seed getting to the Final Four in college basketball. I mean, first-year coach and had a younger team and switched up the defense a lot. So the fact that they got there then, I mean, they're a bull going to the slaughter in that game. Last year, I thought they had a pretty good shot. The Buccaneers actually last year weren't so hot during the regular season, but they hit their stride in the playoffs. So, I felt they had a shot against them. But this year, I felt like this was their year. They went through their growing pains. Dylan, this is his second year. He looks solid. Him and Jones were splitting the carries all year. Rodgers is near the end of his career, so he has that whole, all-star elite player that at the twilight of their career, they have all the knowledge that they need, but still the physical attributes, putting up huge numbers all year. This year, Rodgers actually seemed happy. Other years you could tell he's either so dialed in that it wasn't fun or whatever the issue is going on with management or coaching or whatever. But this year, it's like the whole team had a really good vibe to them. The defense was playing a lot better all year. Obviously, the special teams wasn't doing well, but that's kind of been, the last several years they've been struggling with that. But anyway, so going to the postseason, you can ask Chris. I was texting him. I'm like, man, if you're not confident with this team, you're not going to be confident with any team. They're solid. You have young guys that are really solid. You have old veterans that are really solid. The defense has a nice mixture. They don't really have any major weaknesses in the defense, especially picking up Campbell at linebacker. So going into this game, I felt like they had what they needed to stop the run, which we were right on that. I felt like their offense was good enough to, get past the strong 49ers defense. They've seen them enough times and know what to expect. But I think the thing that I reasoned on wrong is I was thinking the advantage that the 49ers have against everyone else is Kyle Shanahan is very intelligent and can out-scheme people. But Matt LaFleur has been working with him for the last, 8 years or so. So he knows what he's going to do and how things look. So the advantage that the 49ers would have would be offset by Matt LaFleur knowing his scheme, which means it would come down to who has the best players. And in that sense, people are crazy if they say the 49ers in general have a better team than the Packers. I mean, they just don't if you line up roster to roster. But what I didn't think of is Kyle Shanahan is the teacher, Matt LaFleur is the student. And you saw that LaFleur was his little brother. And Shanahan knew everything LaFleur wants to do. So it's actually the opposite, where I think the Packers against any other team, I honestly think they would probably beat any other team this year. But the Niners know exactly what to expect from them, how to execute it, how to stop it. And that's what they ran into tonight. But I have to say, the one thing I am getting sick and tired of hearing is wanting the number 1 seed, wanting the home field, wanting to play in cold weather because it's a big advantage for the Packers. That has not been the case recently, especially with Rodgers. You know, you had the Giants come into town when the Packers are 15-1. They got beat the exact same way as this. The offense couldn't do anything at all. You had the 49ers, and they came in with Kaepernick, same thing, really low-scoring game. The offense couldn't do anything. Everyone blames the defense for not stopping Kaepernick, which is true, but the Packers really didn't do anything on offense. Then you have the Buccaneers last year. You know, again, the Packers couldn't score at all. They finally picked it up in the fourth quarter, and now tonight too. I mean, they didn't have anything. But yet, if you look in years past, especially with Rodgers as quarterback, when they go to Atlanta, they went to Arizona, you know, they traveled to other places going into domes or warm weather. They're totally outmanned and outgunned previous years, but the offense showed up. They played amazing as the defense that totally kicked them in the butt and lost the games for them. But it seems like the home games, the offense doesn't do anything. So anyways, I could talk forever about it, but it doesn't really shock me again when you think of, like I say, I think Shanahan just knew LaFleur and his offense so well. But I have to say too, and we can break this down more, but I'm really starting to wonder if Rodgers is a big game quarterback. I mean, he's been MVP 4 times, and true MVPs, like look at in basketball, any true MVP like Durant or Giannis last year, what did he do in the closeout game? Went crazy. And Rodgers, you don't see that. It's like, again, last year, he did not play well at all in the NFC Championship game. You look at all the postseason games that he played, his QBR is like 30 points less in the playoffs than the regular season. And even tonight, I know the Niners defense is good, but hitting Adams a couple times across the middle of the field, the ball was way lower. Adams had to dive for it to scoop it off the ground. The one to Lazard down at the 10-yard lines, the hitch route, same exact thing. He had dive on the ground to catch it. The one to Aaron Jones where he went out to the sideline, Aaron Jones had to spin back around to catch the ball. It's like every single time the passes were just a little off. Now, any other quarterback, you could say, that's fine as a completion. But all year, Rodgers is pinpoint accurate. If a guy has to slow up, if he has to jump or dive, he's all upset that it was off a little. But every pass was like that for him tonight. And it just seemed like he's just off. Let's just put it down to this. I know there's other people that are playing the game. Aaron Rodgers got the ball 4 minutes left, and it ended in 4th and 19. Jimmy Garoppolo got the ball with 3 minutes left, drove the team down for a winning field goal. That should never happen. So that's, I don't know. Anyways, again, I could keep talking about it, but those are kind of my thoughts. I was pretty confident going into it, but when the dust settles, I'm not exactly shocked at how it turned out either.
What do you think, Chris?
I hope Rodgers retires. I don't want to see. I'm sick of him. I'm sick of his whole attitude. He can't come around acting like the cockiest guy in the world and then choke year after year. I'm done. Let's see Jordan Love. I'm sick of it. LaFleur should be fired simply for halfway through the year saying, "Oh yeah, Maurice Drayton, he's my guy. Special teams, don't worry about it. It's fine." I mean, Rodgers choked this game and destroyed his reputation. But this loss was 100% on special teams, failing in every single facet of the game. I don't have quite as eloquently as DJ put it, but I mean, it's an embarrassment. It's a complete franchise embarrassment on every level. It's a reputation destroying embarrassment. I mean, it just complete choke artist on every level. I don't know. It's shocking.
Yeah, it's one thing I kind of do agree with you on is the Matt LaFleur aspect of it is what he has done. I'm not saying he's a bad coach, right? I'm not going to say that yet, but what I would say is what has he done that Mike McCarthy didn't do with Aaron Rodgers? What has he really done? He's got the same. Now, interestingly enough, I hope I got this right, but I'm looking at QBRs, passer ratings, playoff leaders, and Aaron Rodgers is higher than Tom Brady. So I don't know if it's that he doesn't perform in the playoffs. My thing is Tom Brady last year threw 4 interceptions in a playoff game.
3.
And his team, Wasn't it 4?
It was 3.
3. Okay. It was 3, but he still won, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's never really a playoff game where I feel like Aaron Rodgers can play bad. He always has to play his best game. And if you're going to
but he didn't have to play that good in this. He wasn't like terrible in this game. He was average, but the defense didn't give up any points, and that still wasn't but it comes down to with 4, like DJ said, with 4 minutes left in the game, it's a tie game, and he goes 3 and out. You can't even get one single first down. And it was like bad. Like the sacks he kept taking, like throw the ball away. I don't know what he's thinking.
Yeah. Again, I don't know how much to blame because I've been on the record of saying that he doesn't have enough pass catchers. I'm going to continue to beat that. Yeah. Right. So if all you have is Devontae Adams, the defense just needs to double shadow him. And then who else are you going to pass the football to?
Yeah. Well, part of it too, though, they look at how he fought tooth and nail to get Cobb back, which I thought was great because Rodgers in the slot would not be good as a rookie. When you got a Super Bowl contending team, you can't start over there. Cobb got 1 pass all game. And that was the one thing that I thought would help this game, especially as Cobb, because him and Rodgers can read each other's minds. If they see something on the defense, they don't even have to make a signal. Cobb knows what Rodgers has seen and he can run it. So I thought there's going to be times between him and Adams that they would have that unspoken communication and just find little gaps here and there that were, audible from what their routes actually were. But it's like Rodgers wanted Mercedes Lewis back. Rodgers wanted Cobb back. Obviously, Devontae Adams. Rodgers absolutely loves Lazard. So he can't say anything about the receivers because the only one they were missing that could have helped them was MVS. But let's be real here. I believe they only threw to two passes to wide receivers outside of Adams the whole game. So how much would MVS had any action anyway?
And I think MVS is like clearly worse than Cobb and Lazard. Like I know he's like the number 2 receiver, but I think he's like far less effective than either Cobb or Lazard.
Yeah, I would say
they needed a number 2 receiver to step up in a major way. And Cobb might still be hurt. He might have been playing through injury. So I might give him a little bit of a pass on that. But like Lazard no-showed. They needed a number 2 to step up in a major way.
Right. And Cobb hasn't been a good receiver for like because of his health.
Well,
really. Well, because of his health, he hasn't been a good receiver in like 4 years. Right. Like, he was
a good red zone guy early in the season.
Well, right. But I mean, then he gets injured and then he's just not the same player. Is my point. And as far as like Rodgers wanting these guys, that's fine if he wants them, but that doesn't make them a good wide receiver or a good tight end. Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm with you guys. I think this was an embarrassing loss, but this is not the game to me that I would personally. Now, I'm not a Packer fan, so maybe I'm less emotionally attached, but I would not blame Rodgers for this game as bad as the special teams played, because really you should have had a 10-0 lead going into halftime at the very least. And the block field goal and the block punt, I mean, that them were killers for the Packers, and I don't know how you can blame that on Rodgers. The last drive you talked about too, where Jimmy Garoppolo they basically ran it down the field. They had short dunk passes that were like 5 yard, to Kittle was just a quick slant, and then Debo coming out of the backfield. But those two are like, get the ball to him and let him work. Other than Adams, I just don't think that the Packers really have that. I think Dillon going down in the second quarter, it was the second quarter, killed the Packers because they were leaning on him heavy early, and it just didn't work out.
They didn't run very effectively all game though. Like, I honestly think like they should have just aired it out more. I'm a big established.
I had that in my notes. I don't think I remember the last time I've ever been yelling, throw the ball more. Usually it's always run the, with Jones and Dillon, it's like run the ball, run the rock. But this game, I mean, and especially in the mid-second quarter, they just kept going up the gut and getting stuffed, and they kept ended up, 2nd and 9, 3rd and 7. Yeah. And I'm like, you got the MVP slinging the ball around. Give him it. Let him take over. But I think where Dylan going out really hurt them was on pass blocking. I thought that hurt because he's a little bit better. He's a bigger body as far as picking up the pass rushers. I think that could have helped give Rodgers a little more time. But again, yeah, it was weird because most of the year, what it reminded me of is like the last couple of years with McCarthy. Now you went back to Ryan, you mentioned, does it look different than McCarthy? I have to be honest, I think that's a horrible take because unless you mean earlier. Yes, earlier.
Yeah, no, early McCarthy. Early
McCarthy, I agree 100%. But late McCarthy, Rodgers couldn't do anything because everyone knew exactly what they're running every single play. They knew what they were doing, and it's like the only way they scored points is when they played backyard and guys just went all over the place when stuff broke down and Rodgers found someone. And that's what this game kind of reminded me of, where it's like he didn't have, like you say, the first read wasn't hardly ever there unless it was to Adams, in which case he's just so talented that he could get 2 inches of room to get the ball in there. But again, that goes back to scheming. And I just wonder, like with LaFleur, don't you do like reverse psychology, like thinking, okay, Kyle's seen me do this, look or this scheme this way all the time. So let's do this exact same scheme, but totally mix up, the routes or, just totally change stuff up so that you bait him into thinking he knows what you're doing. Like, I'll give you an example of how Kyle did that to the defense. You might remember the one run, I think who's it, Mitchell that took it? But anyways, they had number 71 as the man in motion. He came across and then he just totally drove into the defensive line and Mitchell followed him and got a good gain. Now, when it was 4th and 1, they did the exact same set, but they went up the gut. Now, you might look at that and be like, that's all they did was, a dive. But it's like, no, they set him up thinking that it was going to go outside again and he's going to go up the gut and it'd be open. Now, it didn't work, but I'm just saying that's an example of setting them up for them thinking you're going to do something and do something different. I mean, obviously he had something figured out because the Packers are too talented to put 10 points on the board in the whole game. I mean, if you have the MVP at quarterback, you can't say it wasn't a failure to have 10 points.
No, it was. But like, so I felt like there was a couple turning points in the game, especially for that offense. One of them was Mercedes Lewis. It seemed like the Packers were driving to score another time after their first touchdown. And then Mercedes Lewis fumbled the ball and that stopped the drive. And then it seemed like it kind of killed the Packers offense a little bit. And then I think Dylan hurt them. I know they weren't running the ball effectively, but I feel like Dylan is sort of not to the degree that Derrick Henry is, but like that you keep just pounding him in there and he's going to eventually break like a 20-yard, you know what I'm saying? You just keep feeding him because the defense will eventually wear out. I think they kind of missed that. And then obviously the block field goal and then the block punt. And then all those things just accumulated. And yes, you're right that in a situation where you have the MVP, obviously the weather's a little bit of a factor, but that goes back to what you were talking about, DJ. Is home field advantage for the Packers really an advantage, because maybe they can't handle the weather with Aaron Rodgers. Maybe you need things to be a little bit more tidy as far as your environment when you have someone like Aaron Rodgers. But I just, again, I'm going to say, like, if you're going to point to Aaron Rodgers as being part or a big problem in this is not the game to do it, just because the special teams is so awful. They could have had this game if they would have just had that extra field goal. I don't think the Niners would have scored more than 13. They barely got 13. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't say when this interview was recorded, but Friday ESPN dropped. I didn't actually read it myself, but ESPN dropped some big, long Rodgers interview where he's whining about, I'm being canceled, I'm being silenced. I honestly think his head's not in the game. I know you're going to say I'm crazy that I'm not I honestly think he's all swept up in himself. He's an egomaniac thinking I'm the thought leader for this generation. My opinions are super important. And I think honestly, he's more focused on that than because why are you talking to ESPN about your, anti-vax or your cancel culture, whatever crap that he's got? Imagine in his head that he's like this victim type of a guy. I know he's a chip on his shoulder, motivate type of person, but why is that even a focus in your mind in the 2 weeks or week before you're going into the playoffs? Don't talk to the media. Focus on the game. I don't know. Does that have an effect on the game? Maybe, maybe not. But I think it's a horrible look.
Yeah, that's fair. It's kind of like Odell going on the boat right before the playoff game.
Exactly.
Like, you just don't do that. DJ, you had something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, too, one of the things I was disappointed in was the end of the first half. Their intention was just to run the ball and run the clock out. Mm-hmm. And it reminded me of like the end of the NFC Championship game last year, where it's like, I thought it was all gas, no brakes, is always their motto. You have 47 seconds left in a timeout. It's like, run a couple plays, and see where it goes. Now, obviously, then they ended up having the pass on the sidelines. But they, so two things with the field goal thing. They didn't intend to have a field goal shot to begin with. They wanted to run the half out. Secondly, the Niners should have had at least a field goal, if not a touchdown, if Jimmy G didn't throw an interception on 1st and 15 instead of throwing the ball away. So that kind of evens that out. But the other thing I don't get, and I rewatched it like 5 times, Aaron Jones is going down the sidelines, and I think if he kept going straight, he would have either gotten a touchdown or really close to it. And even if he got tackled, what would happen? He would have gone out of bounds.
Yeah.
And they would have used the timeout. And then they'd be on the 10-yard line with the timeout. And it's like, well, now you got at least, and there's like, 20 seconds left or something like that?
Yeah.
Like, now you'd have at least 2 plays. Why? And, we don't play professional football, but I think we know enough that when a guy's coming at you from an angle, you wait till they just about get to you, and then you hit the brakes, because they'll go by you, and then, and then you can cut and field if he passes you up. But it's like, he was still 5-6 yards to his left, and he started like cutting in. Yeah. I think that, I don't know why he did that, but I thought that kind of hurt him a little bit too.
Yeah. Now I will say about the Jimmy G thing is, like, every game Jimmy Garoppolo throws like 5 passes that every team should intercept. And the Packers had a lot of chances, by the way. There was one play, it was the rookie. It was the rookie ran behind the receiver instead of in front. And then
Pick 6 right there.
Right. And like, obviously, I think blocked field goals in the NFL is just unacceptable. Like, you should never have a blocked field goal, basically, most of the time, right?
Yeah.
And then in the same game, you get a blocked field goal and a blocked punt. That, to me, blows my mind. I think Matt LaFleur's job should be in jeopardy just basically for the way the special team is performed. Because
that's what I'm saying.
When Mike McCarthy, one of the reasons why I thought he should have been fired back in like 2013-14 is he kept holding on to Dom Capers, even though that defense would not perform. So what again, I just don't know what Matt LaFleur is doing different than what Mike McCarthy did early on in his tenure. Like, he would win a lot of games with Rodgers, and then they would just fall apart. And the gas thing, DJ, you're so right about that, because this was one thing we talked about on the show we had on Wednesday, is basically like, the Packers allow teams to stick around, even in the regular season. So, when we think about, like, even with Rodgers in the playoffs, and how is it just the mindset of the team? Is it the coach's mindset? I don't know. Why is it that, like, you allow Baker Mayfield and the Browns to almost beat a game where Baker Mayfield throws 4 interceptions, or the Ravens have their backup quarterback in and you somehow barely win that game? I don't know why they allow teams to stick around, but it's just, I don't know. It just, I could not believe that they lost this game. I was shocked. I was really shocked. Go ahead, Chris.
One of the big things is, obviously Nick Bosa is like a top 2 defensive end. He's incredible. Sure. He absolutely destroyed Dennis Kelly this whole game. Dennis Kelly, he's at the end of his rope. I appreciate him. The last 2 seasons, I think he's been mid-season pickups as like a fill-in. He's a 3rd-string tackle. He's doing his best. Bosa just completely manhandled him the entire game. So I don't know if they needed to like constantly have someone chip on that side or what. I'd have to, find, look at reviews or whatever. That was like a big part of why they lost, is Bosa just manhandled.
I thought who's the defensive tackle? Armstead?
Eric Armstead, yeah.
Yeah, he was pretty good today too.
Yeah,
DJ?
Warner was a monster.
You had something, DJ, for us?
Yeah, I was just going to say two things according to going along with that. First of all, Bakhtiari better really be hurt, and it better not have been one of those things where it's like, well, let's get past this round so we have him against, Donald and Miller if we have to play the Rams or, the Buccaneers, defensive line, because that killed them not having him in there. If he was in there and they put him, opposite of Bosa, that would have been a game changer. And the other thing I didn't like too is how then they stuck Turner in there at left tackle instead of Josh Nijman, who had been playing the majority of the year and was doing really, really good. And then when you put Turner in there, it moved everything around. And now it's like that's the one thing that worried me about all these guys coming back was would it wreck their chemistry? Now, I thought that mostly on defense, which that didn't. I mean, the Niners scored 6 points the whole game, so the defense was stout. I mean, that was one of the best games I've ever seen the defense play, especially in the playoffs. But the offensive line, it's like, why do you make change? If Bakhtiari couldn't come back, then just leave everything the way it was the last several weeks of the season, so you have cohesion there. Because I think that is one thing. I mean, Rodgers did have a lot of pressure all game. And that wrecks your running and everything because, the gap control isn't what you're used to, the timing, all that stuff was wrecked because of it. But again, I still go back to, we always want home field advantage. I almost guarantee you play this game, in a dome somewhere. I think the Packers beat them pretty easily. I think their offense gets, in the 20s, but for whatever reason, they don't do great. And, maybe that goes back to like you're talking about the Browns game too. Offense didn't look very good that game. Do you remember the weather? It's pretty similar. It was snowing. It was windy. It was in the 20s. It's just frustrating because the one thing I really gave kudos to LaFleur about was that he makes the team play outside in practice. That's the one thing that always bothered me about McCarthy is they'd always play inside. And when he's asked about that, he's like, well, it's all mental. You just have to be mentally tough. But we all know playing football outside, when your fingers are frozen, your toes are frozen, and you got a hard rock coming at you, it's not mental. You physically can't do it.
Yeah.
So when you get used to it, it is an advantage. But I don't know, didn't show up today and hasn't showed up recently, it seems like.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, no, I thought the same thing. I didn't think Bakhtiari was ready in the Detroit game. I give him credit for trying, okay? I'm not disparaging Bakhtiari at all. I figured there was no way he was ready when he played in the Detroit game. And he came out after 3 or 4 series and he needed a breather. Offensive linemen play 100% of the snaps unless they're actually injured. You know what I mean? They don't come out of the game. When he needed a breather, and then there was another series, he came out and went right to the medical tent, and obviously they were checking something, but I'm I assume he's not in game shape, which I sort of understand, but also that's kind of weird because it's all you can do is practice. He hasn't been playing. But I'm not surprised that Bakhtiari didn't play based on that. But I thought the same thing. I thought Josh Nijman didn't miss a step playing the whole season at left tackle. So I 100% agree with DJ. I kind of thought even if Bakhtiari was healthy, allegedly, I kind of just thought let's just roll with the same 5 guys. And then I forget who was inside because there was Myers and Newman were hurt, and I don't honestly remember who started. And it came back, but I just thought the same thing. Why guys haven't played in 10 weeks? Let's just roll. And the offensive line wasn't, a problem at any point. So let's just roll with the same guys that have got us here. And second of all, I hate the bye week. Every single time the Packers have a bye week since 1996, they absolutely choke. And the Detroit game, barely counts as a game. They didn't really do, they tried to win. They played half of a game and they did vanilla concepts the whole game. So basically they haven't played in 3 weeks. I felt very bad going into this game because they haven't played in 3 weeks, a real game. So let's not the Packers get number 1 seeds anymore. Let's have them be a wild card team and play on the road, because they actually show up when they play on the road.
Yeah, Chris, I just want to hit on that point because actually I was going to ask you guys both after we were done reviewing both the games, was like both the 1 seeds lost. And they both had the week off. The other 2 teams have been playing for their playoff life since week 17. They had to win every game, till now. So how much damaging, it looks pretty damaging to the teams that actually get a bye, because like you said, especially the Packers, they took a whole game off basically against Detroit. So you aren't playing competitive football for 3 weeks, and you're playing against this team that's been like just clawing and scratching. They're not going to slow down. So I wonder,
who did the Titans play in week 17? Do you remember?
Yeah, they played the Texans.
Because that barely counts.
Yeah, and they barely. I think
they played the Dolphins in week 16, and that barely counts.
Hey, come on!
No,
you're right. You're right. Though you're right. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. So I actually sort of agree with that. I just wonder how much the number 1 seed really benefits teams sometimes with that in mind, because even like Peyton Manning, those teams are always getting the number 1 seeds, and they would always just lose. So I don't know, not all the time.
I think if you're like absolutely dominant, like you're a 16-0 Patriots team, it doesn't matter, but it really does come down to coaching. I don't know. I don't know if it's a focus thing or what, but it's sketchy to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder, I'm sure there's very easily, you could Google and find numbers as far as like teams with bye weeks, what their overall record is, but yeah, stat guys like to say like momentum isn't real, and I couldn't disagree more.
I disagree with that. I think it's real. I just think it's fragile, and because it's so easily like people swing so easy, they don't believe momentum's a concept. But I think it can be snapped so quickly that people, I don't know. It was just like going from that first drive to the second drive with the Packers. I think that fumble hurt the team big, because they were moving the ball really good up until that point.
Also, another real quickly, I'll let you get to what you're saying, but one of the other big ones was Rodgers hit DeGuara. I can't remember. I think that was in the second or the third quarter. Rodgers hit DeGuara for like a 25-yard pass right in the hands. I mean, Rodgers, that was a perfect pass. No complaints there. And that killed the drive. So that was another big, like, absolutely deflating turning point.
Yeah, I remember that play. That was good point. Okay, guys, anything to add more about this game? Yeah, go ahead, DJ.
Just one last thing, going back to where I started on Rodgers. He just reminds me a lot of like Steve Nash or something like that, where it's like dude puts up crazy huge numbers but just can't seem to win it in the big moments. Again, you go back, I can't remember all the games on everything in front of me, but 49er game years ago, lost at home. He didn't play well. Now Seattle, he didn't play well either, but Seattle had one of the best all-time defenses. Then you look at the Giants game, same thing. Didn't play well at all. Last year against the Buccaneers, didn't play very well until he started slinging it like nuts when they were down big in the second half. Tonight, didn't play very well. Now, tell me, what was the one big NFC Championship game he won? Against the Bears, right? And he still didn't play well in that game. But as he knows, they own the Bears. And do you remember who was sitting on the sidelines for half the game?
Yeah, Jay Cutler.
Jay Cutler was sitting on the sidelines half the game. And same with wasn't last year, didn't the Rams have their backup in divisional round? Goff wasn't playing last year, was he?
No, Goff played.
Did he play?
Goff
okay.
Played, yeah.
Well, he was like injured going into the game or what. So it's just weird that, again, the only NFC Championship game out of 6 now that he won was against the Bears, who they always beat the Bears, and Jay Cutler was injured for half the game. It's just crazy. Now, again, I know some of them, like, again, I'll give you 2 years ago against the Niners. He didn't play well, but they're totally outmanned, outgunned. When they went to Atlanta that one year, you knew they're going to get destroyed. So there's 2 of the 6, they had no shot at all. But you look at, again, the Giants, you look at the Seahawks, you look at tonight, they had a legitimate, I mean, they should have won those games, and he just did not show up. And I know you don't want to paste it all on him, but during the regular season, why is it that he throws all these crazy huge numbers and then it gets to the playoffs and he doesn't?
I have an answer for that.
Is it in his head? Is he like over analyzing things too much?
Didn't the 49ers number one receiver, cornerback, wasn't he inactive in this game? And didn't another cornerback come out of the game? Because that's why they were like, oh, Josh Norman is on Adams now. He's going to target him.
Deontay Johnson came out, but he came back in. Yeah, he came back in.
That was a horrible throw for the record. The one immediately where he tried to hit Adams on the sideline and just overthrew him. But the weakness, which is why I was a little hesitant to pick San Francisco over Dallas last week, because their secondary is not very good. Obviously, their front seven is excellent, but against a weak secondary, and I mean, even the throws to Jones out of the backfield, Jones was constantly like, he's having to like catch like off balance just to, and I mean, I don't think that he would have necessarily broken most of those for big gains, because I mean, like there's a couple of them, like the defense was right on him, but he's throwing those dump offs out of the backfield, and Jones is having to like make these great catches just to get like a 1 yard gain. And it's just bizarre.
Yeah. I guess like I think differently about him, because one of his better games in the playoffs was the Super Bowl he played against the Steelers, right? So if you're gonna say if he's not, like, he performed really great in that Super Bowl.
But that was 11 years ago.
Correct. So the question is, why is it that Aaron Rodgers doesn't perform as good as the regular season as he does in the playoffs? It's because the defenses get better in the playoffs. No, you're allowed to play more physical. And most of the time, real quick,
it's got to be the weather, though, because look at Arizona. He lit it up in Arizona right after Favre left. Did they score like 48 points or something that game? And then the Arizona, where they had the 2 Hail Marys, played great in that game. Atlanta in the NFC Championship, even though they're way outgunned, he played really good in that game. So, I mean, he does fine when he's indoors in the playoffs for sure. But it seems like when it's cold and bad weather here, which is fine. I get it. But it's like, then don't be saying the colder the better. We want to be playing here. We want the bad weather, the cold. Because it's
Bayport High School's fault for allowing the 49ers to get acclimated. They should have had to stay in their hotel room for the last 36 hours and then gotten shocked to their system when they stepped outside.
Well, and then like, so when you think of cold weather, though, what wins games in cold weather? Your run game, your defense, and like quick passes, because typically throwing passes long through the cold air is not good, right? Like, and so who does that favor? Like, especially in this game, when you have someone like Deebo Samuel and George Kittle, and you have a better running offense, especially when AJ Dillon goes down, you know what I'm saying? And they have the better defense, right? So I guess my thing is especially through Aaron Rodgers' career, if you go back and look, he did, like, the majority of his career, he's barely had a top 15 defense. So at some point, quarterbacks meet defenses that are physical, and they're allowed to play more physical in the playoffs. They're better because that's why they're in the playoffs. So like Tom Brady throws 3 interceptions, but he could still win. Why? Because his defense helps carry the team in Tampa Bay. He has 3 or 4 weapons in Tampa Bay that he can throw the ball to. His run game and Leonard Fournette's really good. You know, he came on at the end of the season last year. I just feel like, especially with Aaron Rodgers, since Cobb and Nelson have been gone, the Packers have not given him a second target. They have not gotten a good slot receiver, not one, like, since Cobb left the first time. And that is what has been hurting the Packers, because who do you look at besides Adam that can go open in 5 yards?
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree.
Right, DJ?
But you just answered your own question. Their defense has always been horrible. Their offense has always been stout. Why spend more money and more drafts on an offense that's already putting up huge numbers when your defense is losing games? So that's why they've been building the defense. Now, that's what's baffling this year is they finally got their wish. The defense was stout, but the offense was stout too. But who didn't show up this game? special teams destroying it or not, if someone told you that San Francisco is going to be able to put up 13 points, do you think Packers are winning or losing tonight?
Yeah. No, you're right.
And that's why, again, you can blame whoever you want, but the offense has to score more than 13 points at home in a playoff game. I don't care who you're playing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to answer your question, though. Why do you do that? It's because as long as you've been drafting defense, you've been whiffing on most of your draft picks. That's why. You've been drafting defense. I have all the draft picks up here right now. I actually had a sheet I made in the offseason. They draft defenders in the first 3 rounds, basically, or whatever, right? For the last 4 years, and their defense has not gotten any better. When it got better is when they went into free agency and actually got a couple pass rushers, right? So you're not good at drafting defense that good, I should say, because I like Stokes. I think he's a good defender, right?
Well, Rashawn Gary was the best player on the field for the Packers tonight.
That's true. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And that's the thing that drove me nuts with Thompson is how they went through the draft so much, which I felt like when they had that window for a couple of years, they needed to get veterans on defense. I'm one of those that's definitely way more into, if you can get good, a veteran that's 3, 4, 5 years in his career and trade a draft pick for that, that's much safer than getting an unknown through the draft. And that drove me nuts for years. But I'm just saying the reason that they're focusing on defense is because the defense stunk. And even though their offense wasn't great, even though they weren't getting help for Rodgers, he didn't need it. I mean, if they're 25th in offense, year after year, then yeah, absolutely. But they weren't. They're always the top scoring offense. So it's like you can't just outscore everyone all the time. But look at the Saints. At some point you need to have a defense that's gonna show up, and that's what they were working on.
Right. You can't I agree with that, but the problem is it's regular season football is different than playoff football. So you could put up a bunch of numbers in the regular season because a lot of the times the Packers are playing the teams like the Lions and the Bears and the Vikings, which, aren't that great. Yep. So they could put 45 points or whatever. And the other thing is, it's not even just like drafting. Fine. If you want to go ahead and draft all these defensive players, that's fine. But then why don't you just go out and get a veteran wide receiver that is good? Like Golden Tate, he was out there 2 years ago. He was a really solid slot receiver after Detroit. Didn't even try to get him. Danny Amendola, he went to Detroit for like $5 million a year, like 2 years ago. He was pretty solid for Matthew Stafford. You don't think that Aaron Rodgers could have used someone like that? It's like they went out and got Devin Funches, which is basically a very, very cheapened down version of Devontae Adams. Like cheap, like he's not even close, but he's a big wide receiver that catches balls. That's what he is. So my point is, they haven't done enough to put another guy that can be a guy who gets open quick enough when Adams is being doubled like that.
Well, they've wasted a lot of time on MVS, and I'm not a big MVS fan.
Well, all these wide receivers, right? I
like Lazard, but
I know,
MVS,
but he's been in the league for 4 years is all I'm saying. It's like we see these young wide receivers like, I know this is an extreme example, but Jamar Chase, who we'll talk about in a second, he breaks all these records, and it's his rookie year, and he knows how to play football.
Who did they draft? Who went right after Jordan Love?
Claypool, right?
Wasn't it Higgins?
T. Higgins. Yes.
Higgins went not too far after Jordan Love, who should be their starting quarterback next season, as far as I'm concerned, but was also a horrible draft pick.
Well, yeah, we could talk about drafts all day. I mean, just the fact that they picked King over TJ Watt was an atrocity. And the fact that they could have had, was it Smith from Alabama that's on the Eagles now? Devontae Smith. I mean, he was like one that I was like, I wanted to go after him so bad. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. But I'm just saying, it's like all year you're throwing up huge numbers. You don't expect yourself to totally stink when it matters most.
But you said, though, DJ, too, though, which I think is a great point, it keeps happening in the playoffs, right? So why? It could be the home field advantage. It could be the cold weather. It could also be like when defense gets more physicals, you need to have athletic players that know how to get open, like route running players that know how to get open. And I don't think the Packers have anyone like that except Adams. And when they're doubling Adams, what are you going to do, right? So
and they didn't have a tight end in this game. I mean, we all love Big Dog, big dog fan, but he's a third string tight end who gets dump off passes occasionally.
mm-hmm.
DeGuara, no one, he dropped a huge pass. I know they're high on DeGuara. No one knows. He could be a complete bust. He might turn out to be a good player. But, I mean, I know what you said a couple weeks ago. I think you're like, is Tunyon a good tight end or is Rodgers making him good? But the fact is they had absolutely zero tight end presence in this game.
I'm not saying he would probably been better than their options they did have.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm not going to argue that, but I'm just saying, like, if he didn't have Rodgers, would he be as good? I don't know. And it's possible he could, but like you saw, like someone like Julius Thomas for the Broncos, he was really good with Peyton Manning, and then he goes to Miami, and then he doesn't do anything.
Yeah,
probably more on Miami than him, but yeah, that's my point. But it's going to be interesting to see. Real quick before we move on, anything on this game? Else on this game? No. Do you guys think like Aaron Rodgers should go? Then are you ready for a new start? How are you guys feeling about that?
I'm fresh start.
Okay, you're good with the fresh start. What do you think, TJ?
It just depends on what all the other pieces do. Like if you could bring the band back together, it's obviously going to give them the best shot possible. But is Devontae Adams going to stay? If he doesn't, then Rodgers is wasting his time because they won't have the weapons needed. But if they could keep everyone that they have, they have a legitimate shot. They really should be winning these games. But I'm kind of with Chris too, where I am getting a little bit tired of, the arrogance of Aaron Rodgers when it's like, dude, you haven't won enough to act the way that you do. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I know he's won the MVP 4 times, but part of me wishes that they would not give that. Because here's the thing. It's a season award, right? But does anybody get it that doesn't make the playoffs? No. So why don't we see how they perform in the playoffs? Because right now, Josh Allen deserves it more than Aaron Rodgers.
Yes.
Because he had their nemesis come into town, and every time they touched the ball in cold weather, 7 degrees, and they threw the ball and scored 7 straight touchdowns. But Aaron Rodgers, the greatest quarterback who ever lives, didn't do anything. Now, again, you can go back to weapons, but look at the Bills. How many more weapons do the Bills have than the Packers? I mean, they got Diggs, but the Packers have Adams. They have Singletary. The Packers have Jones and Dillon. If you match them up, they're not any worse off than the Packers are or better off, I should say, with receivers. So it's, I'm just saying it's like last year I would have been, I want to say devastated, but you didn't want to see Rodgers go because you knew that they had everything needed to win. They had everything they needed to win it. But now I'm kind of with Chris. It's like if he does go or he wants to go, it's like, especially if he's like last year where he gets a real hard head and, is all sour about stuff, then it's like, dude, just go because they did everything that you wanted them to do last offseason and it didn't work out. So, but if you want to stick around and play, if you're like, no, me and, Goody got a great relationship and I love Green Bay and I want to finish my career here. And Goody's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's sign him to a 3-year deal. I'm all for it. I still think that they'll win a Super Bowl if he sticks around for 3 more years. I'd feel really confident that they'll win it one of these times. But at the same time, if he leaves and Adams leaves, then it's like, all right, they had 3 straight cracks at getting to the Super Bowl, 2 with home field, and they fell short. So it's like apparently it's not working.
Yeah. To be clear, I 100% know that the Packers are a better team with Rodgers than without Rodgers. I just am sick of the emotional roller coaster that comes. Like, okay, if we need to be like 6-10 for 5 years, so be it. But to have like Super Bowl expectations and choke like this is just awful.
Well, I don't know if it's more awful than going into a season not having any expectations, but like just as a Lions backer and a Dolphin fan for many years, it's been torture, and I would love to have somebody to root for like Aaron Rodgers.
You're right. Yeah.
So if you guys don't want him, trade him to Miami. That's all I'm asking. I'm saying like, I'll take him. No, I think this early exit makes his chances of going though greater.
Yeah, it's just an attitude thing. If he would humble himself and be like, yeah, I talked like a butthole for the last year, and let's stop going on Pat McAfee and making a fool of myself. Let's just keep my mouth shut, work hard, stop being an idiot and making himself a laughing stock. That's fine.
Yeah, it's so funny how different we view it. I just I would rather have him. I very rarely I understand why he was upset. I personally don't blame him, especially with the Jordan Love thing. I was just looking at the draft.
Yeah.
They could have had Michael Pippen too, or Jonathan Taylor. Not that they needed another running back, but just saying they had a lot of other options over Jordan Love. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's Chase Claypool. I'm just throwing this out there. I just think that they could have done better putting some more weapons around him. But
if I may have a final thought, and then
sure, go ahead.
I don't have any.
Then we'll go on to the next game after.
It is sickening that everything that basically the last 2 years where the flaws of this team that everyone has talked about, and then the biggest time, the exact flaws show up. Special teams, horrible. No secondary wide receiver. Jordan Love, complete wasted pick. Could have used it on a talented player that helped you out. You have a first-round pick that's sitting on the bench doing nothing. I mean, obviously the defense played great. You can't expect complete miracles, but last drive of the game, 49ers go right down the field, get in the field goal range. It's just everything that's been a problem for this team gets magnified in the biggest moments. Every single year, they don't get fixed. That's what's really frustrating for me.
Yeah. What about you, DJ? Any final thoughts before we go on to the next game?
No, it's a good sum up.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, guys. I was really hoping you guys were I was rooting for either the Packers or the Rams. So that's what I was doing for the NFC. But well, there you have our instant reaction to the 49ers game against the Packers. What do you guys think of the game overall? Should the Packers move on from Aaron Rodgers? Let us know your feelings on the game and what the Packers should do moving forward. And if the 49ers have a chance to get to the Super Bowl. If you'd like to listen to the more of my podcast on NuttieBuddie Sports, a link to the podcast will be in the description below. Please comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you guys soon.